Sarah sat in the dim light of the living room, her fingers absent-mindedly stroking Max's golden fur, which had once been so thick and vibrant. Now it was patchy in places, and his once lively tail wagged only with great effort. She watched him for a moment, the way he laid there, his head resting on the soft rug they'd chosen together years ago. Every inch of their home was filled with memories, each one a little heavier now. Max had been by her side for over a decade. From the moment he was a pup, bounding into her life with a joyful bark and an unrelenting enthusiasm for life, he'd been the one constant, the one true companion who would never let her down. He'd been there during her worst heartbreaks and greatest triumphs. She remembered the first time she brought him home. He'd been so small, his fur soft and smelling of puppy shampoo. He'd chewed up half the furniture in the first week, but she didn't mind. Those early days were filled with laughter, and even now she could hear his paws tapping across the hardwood floor, racing through the house with excitement. But now he was slowing down. The sparkle in his eyes had dulled, replaced with a soft, tired gaze that spoke of a life well lived, yet nearing its end. Max had begun to struggle with the simplest of tasks, climbing the stairs, standing up after a nap, or even walking to the door to go outside. His legs were stiff, and his body seemed to protest every movement. Sarah had always feared this day, but now it was impossible to ignore. She could see the pain in his eyes, the way he seemed to want to rest but couldn't find comfort. Her hand trembled as she ran it across his ear, the one that used to perk up at the sound of the word walk or when the doorbell rang. It was hard to reconcile the vibrant dog she had known with the frail creature lying before her. She had tried everything to make him comfortable, medications, special food, even acupuncture, but nothing seemed to make a lasting difference. He had outlived the treatments, outlived the hope of improvement. The vet's appointment loomed closer, and with it came the crushing weight of a decision no pet owner should ever have to make. She had tried to prepare herself for this moment, but how could anyone prepare to say goodbye to a friend who had been by their side through thick and thin? Her heart felt heavy with guilt, with the unshakable feeling that perhaps she was making the wrong choice. Was this really the right time? Or was she just too afraid to face the finality of it? Max lifted his head, sensing her distress, and nudged her hand gently with his nose, as if to reassure her. Sarah smiled through her tears, wiping them away quickly. "I know, buddy," she whispered. "I know it's time. I just wish I didn't have to say goodbye." The morning sun bathed the yard in a warm golden light as Sarah gently helped Max onto his feet. His body swayed slightly, unsteady, but his tail gave a faint wag, as though he was still excited for the day ahead. Despite his failing health, the ritual of the morning walk was one that Max had always adored, and Sarah wasn't ready to take that final joy from him just yet. She hooked his leash to his collar, and together, they slowly made their way out the door. The familiar sounds of the neighborhood, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze, washed over them, but it all felt different now. Every step felt weighted, as if the world around them knew what was coming. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, but she pushed it away, focusing on the moment, on giving Max one last walk, one last adventure. Max moved slowly beside her, his legs stiff, but his spirit still intact. He paused frequently, sniffing the same spots he had for years, perhaps trying to remember something, or perhaps simply savoring the last familiar scents. Sarah couldn't help but smile as she watched him, trying to hold on to the little things that made Max who he was. She paused too, giving him time to explore as they wandered down the street they had walked so many times together. She remembered when they first moved into this neighborhood, Max tugging on the leash, eager to greet everyone they passed. Now he walked with the pace of a dog who knew every corner of this world, taking in each moment with the quiet dignity of someone who had nothing left to prove. As they reached the end of the street, Sarah knelt down beside Max, her fingers brushing through his thinning coat. "I'm going to miss you so much," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "You've been my best friend through everything. I don't know what I'm going to do without you." Max lifted his head and met her gaze, his eyes soft, tired, but still so full of love. There was a moment, a long, lingering moment, when Sarah felt as if time itself had stopped. She could see in his eyes that he understood. He knew. But he wasn't afraid, and neither was she. Whatever happened next, they had shared a lifetime of memories, and no matter how hard this was, nothing could take that away. The soft breeze lifted Max's fur, and Sarah closed her eyes, taking in the sound of his breathing, the rustle of the leaves, the warmth of the sun on her face. It was as if the world was giving them a gift, a peaceful moment to share before the inevitable. "Okay, buddy," she whispered. "Let's go home." And together, they turned around, heading back to the place that had seen them through so much. Home. As Sarah drove Max to the veterinary clinic, the familiar hum of the car engine seemed to add an eerie stillness to the day. Max, once excited by car rides, now rested his head against the seat, his eyes half closed, his breathing shallow. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was the longest ride they had ever taken together. The road stretched out in front of them, endless and indifferent, while the backseat time seemed to slow down. She glanced at Max through the rearview mirror. He looked so fragile now, his golden fur faded, his once bright eyes dimmed with age. It was as though the very essence of who he was had slowly slipped away over the past few months, leaving behind only a shell of the dog who had been her constant companion, her confidant, her friend. She had seen him through moments of joy and sorrow, but nothing could prepare her for this, the finality of it all, the choice she had to make now. The clinic's parking lot came into view, a small building that had always felt like a safe place for Max, filled with familiar faces and kind staff who treated him like family. But today, as Sarah parked the car, it felt cold and impersonal. The once comforting scent of disinfectant and pet shampoo now felt overwhelming, almost suffocating. She shut off the engine and sat there for a moment, taking a deep breath. Her heart felt as if it were being squeezed in her chest. Max's head lifted slightly, his nose twitching as if he too sensed the tension in the air. Sarah reached back and gently stroked his head, her fingers brushing through his thinning fur one last time. "It's okay, Max," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We're almost done, just a little longer." When she opened the door and helped Max out of the car, he moved slowly, his body heavy with exhaustion. They walked together toward the clinic, each step seeming like a battle for him. But Sarah stayed by his side, her hand steady on his back, comforting him with each motion. Inside, the receptionist greeted them with a soft smile, but Sarah could see the pity in her eyes. She quickly looked away, focusing on Max, who had begun to slow even further as he approached the exam room. The sterile white walls felt like they were closing in. Sarah could hardly bear the thought of what was coming next. She wanted to turn around, to run out of that room, to take Max home and forget everything, but she knew it wasn't possible. Dr. Hayes entered, her calm demeanor a small comfort. The vet had always been kind to both of them, understanding of Max's aging process. But today, Sarah could see a different look in her eyes, one of understanding, but also of sadness. "Sarah," Dr. Hayes said gently, "I know this is a difficult decision. Let's make sure we're doing what's best for Max." As the vet began to check Max's vitals, Sarah's mind raced. Was it really time? Was this the right thing? She watched Max closely, hoping against hope for a sign that he wasn't ready to go, that somehow there was still a chance. But all she saw in his eyes was quiet acceptance, a love that had endured a lifetime, a bond too deep to explain. The quiet hum of the clinic filled the room as Dr. Hayes gently placed Max on the examination table, her hands moving with practiced care. Sarah stood beside him, her heart pounding in her chest, her throat tight with unshed tears. She couldn't look away from Max, his once bright eyes now clouded with fatigue, his body small and fragile beneath the soft fluorescent lights. Max seemed to sense her presence more than ever. He lifted his head weakly, his gaze finding hers as if to say, "I'm here and I know." The bond they shared felt like an unspoken promise, one that had been forged over countless moments of joy and sorrow, a connection that transcended words. In this room, amidst the cold clinical equipment and the sterile smell of antiseptic, it was just them. "Are you ready?" Dr. Hayes asked softly, her voice kind but with a hint of sadness that matched Sarah's own. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. She had made the decision. She knew this was the right choice. Max's suffering had become unbearable. His body was worn out, his spirit dimming with each passing day. It was time for him to rest, to find peace. Sarah knelt beside Max, her hand gently stroking his fur. His breathing was slow and labored, but he nuzzled her palm, his soft whimper breaking her heart all over again. "I love you so much," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you for being by my side all these years. You've been my best friend. I'm going to miss you every single day." Max let out a soft sigh, his eyes never leaving hers. There was no fear in them, only a quiet understanding. It was as if he knew that this was his final gift to her, giving her the chance to say everything she needed to say, to express every ounce of love and gratitude that had been bottled up in her heart. Dr. Hayes approached quietly, holding the syringe with the euthanasia solution. She looked at Sarah, her eyes full of empathy. "I'll give you a moment," she said, stepping back and leaving Sarah alone with Max. For a brief moment, the world outside the clinic faded away. Sarah sat down on the floor beside him, pulling him into her lap as she had done so many times before. The weight of the decision seemed to evaporate for just a moment, leaving only love in its place. She buried her face in his soft fur, breathing in the familiar scent of him, the scent of home. Max nudged her hand again, his head resting lightly in her lap, his tail giving a small, tired wag. "I love you," she whispered once more, her voice breaking. "I'll never forget you, Max." Dr. Hayes returned and knelt beside them, offering one last comforting smile. As Sarah looked down at Max, she realized that in his final moments, he had given her everything she needed: peace, love, and the strength to let him go. Just as Dr. Hayes reached for the syringe, preparing to administer the euthanasia solution, something unexpected happened. Max, who had been so still just moments before, took a deep breath. His chest rose and fell with a slow but deliberate movement. Sarah froze, her heart skipping a beat. Was this a final reflex or something more? Max's ears perked up ever so slightly, and his eyes, which had seemed to fade, suddenly glistened with a faint glimmer of awareness. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her hands trembling as she reached out to gently stroke his head. "Max," she whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty. Dr. Hayes, too, paused, her gaze shifting from Sarah to Max, her brow furrowing in confusion. "That's unusual," she murmured under her breath. "Let's take another look." Max's body seemed to stir again, just a little. His legs twitched, and though he still appeared fragile, there was a subtle strength in his movements. Dr. Hayes immediately set the syringe down, her professional demeanor shifting into one of concern and curiosity. "Let's check his vitals one more time," she suggested, moving quickly to the side table to grab the necessary equipment. Sarah watched, wide-eyed, as Dr. Hayes took Max's pulse and checked his breathing again. The room was filled with a silence that felt surreal, as if time itself had slowed down in that instant. Sarah's heart was racing. Could this be a sign? Could it be that Max was rallying, that he wasn't ready to go just yet? The vet's hands were steady as she worked, but Sarah could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "His heart rate is a little stronger now," Dr. Hayes said quietly, glancing back at Sarah. It's possible that he's having a moment of revival, but it could also be temporary. We need to wait and see." Sarah's mind was spinning. The decision she thought she had already made was now hanging in the air, suspended between them. Could this be a sign that Max had something left in him? That perhaps, despite everything, he wasn't ready to leave. Max, for his part, remained alert though still weak. He raised his head slightly and looked at Sarah, his eyes focused and clear for the first time in what felt like days. He let out a small, soft whimper, but it wasn't the kind of pain-filled sound Sarah had heard before. It was almost as if he was trying to reassure her, telling her that for just a moment, he wasn't quite ready to say goodbye. Dr. Hayes stepped back, giving Sarah the space she needed to absorb the situation. The pause felt endless. Sarah bent down and gently placed her hand on Max's head again. His fur was warm under her fingers, and the familiar scent of him brought a sense of calm to the chaos in her mind. "Do you want to try keeping him here for a little longer?" Dr. Hayes asked, her voice careful. Maybe we should give him a few more hours or even a day just to see how he responds. Sarah looked at Max, his tired eyes, the slight rise and fall of his chest, the soft whimper he made. Was this a final attempt to rally? Or was it his way of telling her he needed just a little more time? Sarah's mind raced as she watched Max, his breathing still slow but more rhythmic now, his body warmer against her touch. It felt like the world had frozen around them, every second stretching out into eternity. Her heart was torn between the overwhelming love she felt for him and the responsibility to let him go if it was truly his time. Was this a miracle, or was it simply a fleeting moment of strength that would soon fade? Dr. Hayes stood back, observing quietly, allowing Sarah to make the next move. The weight of the decision seemed heavier than ever. In the stillness of the room, Sarah could almost hear the clock ticking louder with each passing moment, every second becoming more precious than the last. She had come in here prepared to say goodbye, to let Max rest and end his suffering, but now there was a shift in the air. Max, who had seemed so close to leaving this world, was holding on, if only for a little while longer. Max raised his head slowly, as though trying to gather his strength. He looked up at Sarah, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity. There was no fear in them, no panic, just that deep, knowing look she had seen countless times throughout their years together. He was telling her something in the only way he could, without words, without actions, but through the depth of their connection. And in that look, Sarah found something she had been searching for all along. Peace. "I know, buddy," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face again, but this time with a sense of relief mingling with the sorrow. "You're not ready yet, are you?" Max let out a soft sigh, his body relaxing a little more against her lap. It was as though he had gathered the last bit of his energy just to reassure her. Sarah reached down, cradling his head in her hands, her fingers gently brushing his soft ears. "Okay," she murmured. "We'll wait. We'll take this one moment at a time." Dr. Hayes stepped closer, her eyes full of understanding. "If you want to give him more time, I completely respect that. We can monitor him closely, make sure he's comfortable. It's up to you." For a moment, Sarah simply sat there, her heart in turmoil, but her mind clearing with each beat. She hadn't expected this. She had thought the decision was already made, that today was the day she had to say goodbye. But now Max was telling her, without words, that he wasn't quite ready. Maybe, just maybe, he still had a little more fight left in him. She gently placed her hand on Max's chest, feeling the faint, steady beat of his heart. "We'll take it slow," Sarah whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "Let's see how you do. I'll be right here with you, every step of the way." The next few hours passed in a strange blur. The clinic had provided a quiet space for Sarah and Max to rest, offering them a room filled with soft lighting and comfortable pillows where they could stay together for as long as needed. Max, though weak, had shown no signs of further distress. Instead, he seemed content, his breathing steady, his eyes closed in peaceful slumber. Sarah remained at his side, her hand gently resting on his back, her thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. She had been preparing herself for this moment for so long, thinking she had accepted the inevitable, but now that they had a little more time together, she wasn't sure what to feel. Every hour that passed seemed like a gift, a brief reprieve from the heartache of knowing that one day they would have to part. But today, Max was fighting. There was a quiet strength in him that Sarah hadn't seen in days. His tail gave a small, slow wag every now and then when she spoke to him, and he lifted his head every so often, meeting her gaze with that unshakable loyalty that had always defined him. It was as if he had decided in that fleeting moment to give her one last gift, a day of hope when she had expected nothing but finality. As the hours turned into evening, Dr. Hayes checked in on them periodically, monitoring Max's condition and ensuring he remained comfortable. Each time she entered the room, Sarah could see the cautious optimism in the vet's eyes. It was as if they were all holding their breath, waiting to see if this was a temporary rally or a sign that Max was ready to continue his journey. "It's remarkable," Dr. Hayes said softly after checking Max's vitals again. "He's responding better than I expected. It's like he's found a little burst of energy." Sarah nodded, her eyes never leaving Max. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to hope that maybe, just maybe, They could have a little more time together, time that was not measured by the sadness of impending loss, but by the joy of being together, even if it was only for a little while longer. That evening, as the clinic began to wind down for the night, Sarah decided to take Max outside for a brief walk in the small courtyard. It was a quiet, peaceful space, surrounded by flowers and soft grass. She gently helped Max to his feet, and though his movements were slow, he seemed eager to get out of the sterile room and into the fresh air. As they walked together, Sarah felt a weight lift from her chest. The evening sky stretched above them, filled with the soft hues of pink and purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. Max, his steps unsteady but determined, walked slowly beside her, and Sarah marveled at how strong he still was, how strong they both were. In that moment, the world seemed to fade away. It was just her and Max, walking through the quiet courtyard as if nothing else mattered. For the first time in days, she could almost believe that there was still time left, time they could savor together. The sun had long set, casting a soft, silver glow over the clinic's courtyard. Sarah and Max had sat together on a bench, side by side, taking in the cool evening air. Max had rested his head on Sarah's lap, his body still frail, but at peace, as if he had chosen this quiet moment to share his final memory with her. It felt like they were in their own little world, just the two of them, undisturbed by time or the realities of the day ahead. As Sarah stroked Max's fur, the weight of the day slowly began to settle on her heart once again. The fleeting moments of hope had softened the sharpness of the decision she had come to make earlier, but deep down she knew that it wouldn't be long before they had to face the inevitable. Max had fought, had given her a few more hours of precious time, but his journey was nearing its end. But in that moment, surrounded by the calm of the night and the gentle sound of crickets in the distance, Sarah realized something profound. It wasn't the length of time that mattered, it was the love they had shared, the bond that had sustained them both through every hardship. That was what would remain with her, long after the final goodbye. Dr. Hayes came to find them just as the stars began to twinkle above, her face gentle but filled with understanding. "I think it's time, isn't it?" she said softly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, one that acknowledged the quiet truth that had settled between them. Sarah nodded, her throat tight, as she leaned down to kiss the top of Max's head. "You've been everything to me," she whispered, her voice shaky but full of love. "Thank you for everything, Max. For the joy, for the love, for just being you." Max's tail gave a small, final wag, as if to say goodbye in the way only he could. His eyes locked onto hers one last time, filled with trust and love. There was no fear in them, no sadness, just peace. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment, knowing that he had done everything he needed to do. He had given her all the love he could, and now it was time for him to rest. Dr. Hayes returned to the room with the euthanasia solution, her steps measured and quiet. Sarah held Max in her arms, cradling him close to her chest as the vet prepared everything. There was a sadness in the air, but also a deep sense of gratitude. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be because love like theirs never truly ends. It would live on in the quiet moments, in the memories, in the heartbeats they had shared for so many years. As the needle gently entered Max's veins, Sarah whispered once more, "I love you, Max. Always." With a final sigh, Max closed his eyes, and Sarah felt his last breath drift away with the wind. In that moment, she knew that she had given him the greatest gift, her love, her presence, her farewell. And with that, Max was finally at peace.